And I've had former racers, actually, people who've raced, coming into my videos and telling me about what it's been like during their time in racing. And it's incredible to learn about how doping was just completely, it was what people talked about. It was the topic of conversation between professional riders, between even riders before the pro ranks. So not just the pros, but the riders who are just beneath the pro level. They're doping. The pros are doping. It's all part of the conversation around the dinner table. You know, you go into the hotel room and there's a load of syringes laid out for each rider. This is what they're telling me. This is what it's been like in the past. So, and they're telling me that they think it's even worse now. Something very strange is going on in cycling at the moment. Do you remember these middle of the night doping tests that happened during the Tour de France? Well, I was just reading this article by Velo News here from Velo Outside Online, and it's mentioning microdoping of EPO. And it just made me think, do they really think that riders today are using EPO still? Don't they know that there's way more other options out there in terms of doping that they can be using that's way more effective and harder to detect? Why are they so far behind the curve here in terms of testing? What is the suspicion really about? Well, let's have a look a little bit further into this article here. It does mention, after all of the microdosing stuff, it does mention that in order to get the authorization required to test riders in the middle of the night, because this isn't something that they do on a regular basis, this requires permission from an actual French judge, presumably is part of the French legal system, the court system, to authorize a middle of the night test, but it has to be based on the grounds of serious and consistent suspicions. So you're telling me that now that there's serious and consistent suspicions coming from the internals of cycling, and in particular, obviously, the anti doping side of cycling. Well, obviously, it's their job to test riders, isn't it? But I get all these fans on my videos sort of defending cycling, defending Tadej Pogacar in particular, because a lot of my videos criticize UAE and criticize how their domination is a little bit strange, how they're beating all of these, doped up records from the past. And they're very quick to defend based on the same arguments: better nutrition, better training, better this, better that. Oh, there's so many marginal gains. Do you remember the whole marginal gains thing, guys, from the Team Sky days? A lot of people were skeptical back then about all Team Sky's marginal gains justifying and explaining Chris Froome's crazy domination. Chris Froome's domination compared to Pogacar is just completely insignificant. And yet, why is it now that Pogacar is just destroying the sport in terms of winning it all? I mean, I don't mean he's maybe destroying it. It's actually quite good for the sport because it's brought a lot of new fans in, right? But that's the point. That is the point. Chris Froome didn't bring in as many fans as Pogacar because Chris Froome and Team Sky, who were doing all the marginal gain stuff that apparently is the explanation behind Pogacar's incredible performances as well, because it's all about the better training, nutrition, better team staff. You know, you hear everything like lactate gels now. It's just like the whole ketones thing from 10 years ago. Like the riders were having ketones. They were actually ingesting ketones that somehow improved performance as well. But now it's lactate gels. There's always a new thing, right, that they start talking about to justify these incredible improvements. But it is still just marginal gains. That's what they keep talking about. It's just wrapped in a different language now. But Pogacar is bringing in new fans, and that's the whole point. They want to make cycling bigger. They need to make it bigger because it's not a very big sport in the grand scheme of things. They want to enhance the reach of cycling. They want to make it more entertaining. These old Tour de France editions where there was just a lot of snoozing, just watching a peloton ride past farm fields for 5 hours before they'd finally reach the town where they were supposed to finish with a sprint or something. But nowadays, there's entertainment from start to finish, and that is true. The racing is more interesting, and is more. There's more going on anyway. But what isn't interesting is the same guy and the same team just completely destroying every single race. That really matters, especially Grand Tours. But yeah, so a lot of fans defending the sport. Well, and making it out like being suspicious about it is stupid. Well, guess what? The anti-doping agency are suspicious, and they are very seriously suspicious. That's why they've done these middle of the night doping tests. But what is even weirder here, guys, is the fact that despite these tests being carried out, Lepatien doesn't even know what the results have been. Based on what he's saying here, the ITA never make a press release about negative results, only about positive results, the Partien says. We didn't see any press release in the Tour de France, so it seems there was nothing in the Tour. But he's not able to definitively say that none of the tests were positive, that they were all clean, right? He's not being able to say that. But that's quite interesting because if you look on the ITA's website, this is the organization that's responsible for keeping sports clean, not just cycling. If you look down here, Lepatien is on their website, and it says the ITA is totally independent from the UCI. Our sports anti-doping program benefits greatly from ITA's global approach, which guarantees synergies in key areas such as research, science, intelligence, blah, blah, blah. So all the sort of business talk, right? But Lepatien is part of this whole thing, but he doesn't actually have any control or any actual insight into what's going on inside the ITA. So it seems, right? So they've just pushed all of this to this global organization that handles other sports. So it's not like UAE can bribe Lepatien or can bribe the UCI now. It's not like that anymore because the ITA is completely separate according to this. Now, can you believe that? Like, we just have to trust that that's the case and there isn't some kind of corruption going on there. But let's just assume that this is the case. What does that leave us to conclude? That, well, there were no positive drug tests, right? The sport is clean. But Lepatien seems to be talking in very archaic terms. Do you really think if they're doping today, they're going to be using EPO? They're going to be using the thing that they used 30 years ago in the whole Lance Armstrong drug, right? The drug that made Lance Armstrong win 7 Tours de France. Do you really think they're going to be using EPO, even microdosing it? I think that's very naive, guys. There are so many other ways to dope these days. It all comes down to blood oxygen levels. It always comes down to red blood cells, blood oxygen levels, the ability to get oxygen you breathe in into the muscles and turn that into energy to create power, right? Sustained power. That whole process has so many moving biological parts, right? There are so many other ways that you can enhance that entire process. So Lepatien talking about EPO is a bit weird in my opinion. He seems to be trying to appeal to what people understand in this public press release from the Tour de France here. It's good that they're being they're being suspicious. It's good that they're being skeptical, but I can't help but think that this is all just meant to send a message to viewers and make them feel like, don't worry, cycling is clean. We're testing the riders. You might be suspicious about what you're seeing, but don't be, because it's all okay, right? We're testing all of them, but they must be damn confident that those tests won't be positive. They must be damn confident, these teams, if they are doping, which personally I do think there's something going on here, because I just can't, personally, I just can't, with everything I'm observing, with everything that I've observed based on what they did 30 years ago, the times up these climbs that was set by dopers, by people who literally were going into their body's biology and modifying it to become these super athletes. We're saying now that we can bridge that gap of athletic hacking, that we can bridge that gap of overt doping, that huge advantage that comes from enhancing your body's red blood cell count unnaturally. We can bridge that unnatural gap with better bikes, better nutrition, better training. Is that it? Maybe riders are training earlier in life. Well, I'm sorry, but Marco Pantani, let's just use him for an example, because it was his record that was beaten by Pogacar and Alpe d'Huez. Marco Pantani started as a young kid as well, right? As soon as he got on a bike, in fact, he got onto his sister's bike, I think it was the story, wasn't it? Like he used his sister's bike and he was able to beat like really good cyclists on road bikes. This is the point, right? they started young back then. They trained like hell back then. They had good nutrition back then as well. This whole 120 grams of carbs per hour thing, I've gone into this and argued with people in comments about this because people think that, yeah, okay, they've trained their guts to consume more carbohydrate than ever now, so therefore that means they can do more power. Not necessarily, because there's no, you and I can train our guts to be able to consume 120 grams of carbs per hour, but will it make us do more power? Will it make us more fit? No, it won't. It'll just make us probably slow us down because we're just getting fatter from consuming more energy than our body can even burn, right? So these guys have the oxygen coming into their system in order to actually oxidize that much carbohydrate. Energy turns into glycogen. They have the ability to actually use all of that fuel, right? There's no point pouring like, more fuel than your car can actually handle inside of its tank, right? Because the engine can only burn so much of it every minute. And it's the same with a human body. You can pour as much energy you want into the stomach. If it can absorb it, that doesn't matter because it can't actually use all of that energy. It has to be able to use it. And so these guys are consuming more energy because their bodies can use it. They're trained obviously really well, but let's think about the whole doping side of it as well. If their bodies are consuming more oxygen because there's more oxygen in their blood, doesn't that mean that they should be consuming more carbohydrate in order to actually be able to oxidize all that oxygen? They're going to need the carbohydrate to go with it, right? So naturally they're going to consume more carbohydrate. You've got to be skeptical. You've got to really think about it. You've got to do your research. You don't have to be an expert, but just be critical. Think critically about all of this because something is not adding up here. And I'm going to keep on talking about it until we know the answers. I mean, that's what we've got to do. But if we never did that during the Armstrong era, he would still be seen as a 7-time Tour de France champion, this incredible athlete, this clean athlete. Yeah, we know, don't we? He wasn't, but everyone was doping. And I've had former racers, actually, people who've raced, coming into my videos and telling me about what it's been like during their time in racing. And it's incredible to learn about how doping was just completely, it was what people talked about. It was the topic of conversation between professional riders, between even riders before the pro ranks. So not just the pros, but the riders who are just beneath the pro level. They're doping. The pros are doping. It's all part of the conversation around the dinner table. You go into the hotel room and there's a load of syringes laid out for each rider. This is what they're telling me. This is what it's been like in the past. So, and they're telling me that they think it's even worse now. So guys, money rules the world. Money rules cycling too. They want to squeeze as much money out of it as possible. So they need their riders to win. The big teams want their riders to win. So how are they going to do it? Use your critical thinking. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching and subscribe if you haven't.